Clear. Roger, Director 7.
All right, today I'd like to bring the Personnel and Human Services Committee meeting to order at about 4:05 p.m. this Tuesday, May 17th. Dan, would you take roll call, please?
Lutz.
Here.
Tilly.
Here.
Duransic.
Here.
DeGick.
Here.
Coonan.
Here.
Garrett.
Here.
Krieger.
Yes.
Storm. Present.
Thank you. And item 3 is minutes of 4:19.
Motion approved. Support.
We have a motion and support. Any comments? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this time, we'll have public input, but just before we have people come to the podium, I want to have Tom Hickner introduce his new staff member.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought I would start the meeting out by introducing our new finance director, since right now she's a nobody with no sign. But Jan was one of many candidates for the position and ultimately was selected based on her qualifications and experience. She previously worked in finance for Saginaw County, so she's got an understanding of county government before moving into the Saginaw Mental Health Authority and then over to STARS, which was their equivalent of Bay Metro over in Saginaw. She has a bachelor's in business administration with a major in accounting and a minor in international management. Jan lives in Munger with her husband Terry and their 2 children. And my script doesn't say this, but they also own a farm, and that's what her husband does on a full-time basis. They enjoy spending time at their lake cabin in Hale and their hunting cabin in Lupton. And Jan spends her free time involved with several school events, including sports and band. And like previous finance officers, she'll be working out of the 7th floor. And as the commissioners all know, you always have direct access to Jan, and anytime you can have a question or a need for information, excuse me, feel free to talk with her directly. And if you have an idea, definitely share it with her and with me. And if you can give her any pointers, because there's a lot of moving parts in this operation here, and it'll take her a little time to know that, for example, there's 7 bathrooms on the 4th floor. So with that, Jan, I don't know if you want to say anything other than hi, but you talk as much as you want.
Just glad to be here, and I think I can bring a lot of expertise your way, and I'm actually really fortunate to be bringing that back to the community I live in. So,
Welcome.
thank you.
Okay, thanks Jan. Thanks for coming aboard. Thanks Tom. Anybody else that would like to come before this committee on public input, feel free to step to the podium.
Lake Bristow, Bangor Township. Here before, we talked about the Tobical Marsh and a few other issues. I was told to bring in some more reports. I have. This one's written by the Department of Natural Resource. You have a copy of it. Here's one on the muck. It talks about the bacteria in the muck. This was written in 2015. This one here is a unique one. It was done by a consulting company out of Ontario. It talks about the Tobical Marsh. You also will got a copy or a place you can go look on the aerial map. You'll see the changes over time. When it comes to the opening, it was dug, and it's in the reports, because of fish stranding. That's why it was dug. Otherwise, I don't believe it would have been dug. But it was fish stranding. It's all in the reports. We talked about the confined disposal facility that's over at Bayside Park. We have certain forms of things that people can get. This is one of them. Unique to farm fields only. What's unique about it is because all the stuff that is in that confined disposal facility is a drainage of the Cucullin River. You also have on the Drain Commissioner's website, that would be under Kilcullen Watershed Management Plan, Chapter 3, pages 39 and page 80. Shows talking about a particular piece of property. I'd like to hand this over. You can review it. Hartley landfill in the paper, right here. Talks about all the stuff that they want to do, fix. You talk about the permitting process for the confined disposal facility. All the permits are here. You talk about the testing for the confined disposal facility. All the testing's here. I am a nobody. Where's the somebodies that are supposed to do all this? That's my question. Is it my job or is it somebody else's job? There was a comment made in the last video about somebody being a teenager. That person was 28 years old when that time took place. Thank you.
William Pearson, Bangor Township. I brought a copy of the flow map just in case you don't have it. I'd like somebody to find on there the depth of that drain that we've been talking about here for quite some time. I'm not here to disrespect Mr. Rivet by no means, because I do respect him. I respect his job. My whole issue, and it's been skirted at the last conversation that I found in the video, is the depth of the ditch. He says nothing's been changed. Apparently he doesn't remember it. I do. It was over 4 foot deep. You couldn't mow it. You can mow it now. The whole issue, and I brought it up to him about the property in the back being wet. I never asked him to drain it. I never asked him to do anything with it. All I asked him is to put the drain back to the depth it was so that we can drain it. That's all. I mean, this stuff about putting dirt in front of our house and damming it up, that's not true. I'm not calling him a liar, but maybe he doesn't recall it, but it's not true. The dirt that was hauled in was to keep our land where it's at because the water is sitting in the ditch and dropping down. It's evaporating. I'm not saying that the flow is not right, because it is. I never said it wasn't. It was never an issue about the flow. It's the issue of the depth of the drain. And I think, like I said before, last time I was here, if you looked around the county, you will not find a drain that's got a name that is as shallow as my little ditch. It's about 1.5 feet deep. I can mow it. Where are we supposed to drain it to? He said if we bring it up there, he'll get it drained. Well, I'm gonna be 2 foot below where he's at. I'm just asking him to dig it down, which is the proper way. He's skimming. What are we talking, 1.5 feet? We're talking 4 foot, you gotta dig it down, you gotta put the culverts down there to get it to flow. Now, I wasn't gonna come here no more until I watched the video and I seen that he made sure that I was out of here. And I just felt I was being disrespected. As a voter, I brought my neighbor. I'm not gonna tell her age, but I wheeled her in here. And I appreciate her being here because this took a lot to get her in here. She's not able to get around real well, but she was willing to come here. Is there something you'd like to say, Mrs. Higgins?
Well, I just wish they could get a drain so we can have a decent living out there. The mosquitoes are so bad you can't go out at night. I don't even go outside at night. I don't know who's in charge of mosquito control. I've never seen this place.
He's right there in the front row.
We used to go by every night about 10:30 at night and spray the ditch up in front. They haven't this year. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. They're still paying taxes on mosquito control, but we never get any protection out there. I'm serious. You can't walk outside. I'm about 300 foot back from Roy Road. You cannot walk outside at night. You just get bombarded with mosquitoes. So I say ours.
I brought someone else here on my behalf. My dad, I bought the property off him. He's more aware of what went on than what I am. His name also, William McPherson, but he's out of Omer.
As my son said, I'm also Bill McPherson from the city of Omer. I used to live where Bill is residing now. I prepared a script because at my age, I flip-flop too much. So I'm here as a supportive witness for my son Bill. It's my understanding that there's been a problem for my son to resolve the issue of pooled water that has no drainage. He has testified that the original ditch had at least 5 bags of riprap on the top of the culvert. There may have been as much as 6. And the culvert was 18 inches. I have the original culvert. The culvert that now crosses Bill's Drive is 12 inches. I watched the video of Mr. Rivet's statements that the ditch has remained the same since 1964. He either has been misinformed or is ignorant of the facts, or perhaps he has another agenda. When we moved to our home on Laurier Road, Bill was 1 year old. That was 1961. We had no problem with standing water until the water plant was constructed around the mid-70s. And the ditches that ran along the railroad tracks were blocked off, causing water to pool on both sides of the track. In 1962, my sister-in-law obtained work at the state park as a secretary. And because our house was only 1 bedroom at the time, she rented a room for Mrs. Nelson, who lived next door on the west side of us. Linda had no vehicle, so she walked to work. I made a path running north from our house to the railroad tracks and planked over the ditches on both sides of the track. She continued using the path until she married a park ranger in 1963. She had no problem with water, except after a rain, she would wear boots and carry her shoes. The ditch on the north side of Laurier Road ran to the railroad tracks and then to State Park Drive. We had no problem with standing water, except at the railroad tracks, because the culvert under the tracks was higher than the bottom of the ditch. This was only a problem for the 2 houses nearest the tracks. When the water plant was being built, the water line was installed down the middle of the road. The spoils were trucked to a neighbor across the road. And then when the sewer line was started, it began at the west end of Laurier Road. The sewer line ran on the north side of the ditch on private property, and the spoils continued to be deposited at the neighbors until they reached Grandma Nelson's property. That's when I requested that they leave the spoils on the property. They reluctantly agreed and left the spoils on my property, the Higgins property, and Schupak's property, which was then bulldozed into a swale on the front of Mrs. Nelson's property that adjoined mine. In order to accommodate the heavy equipment, the ditch was filled and then was restored when the sewer line was finished. In order to resolve the problem with the different elevations at the railroad tracks, they raised the ditch to match the culvert. This caused a problem for the adjoining properties, as the north-south ditches between the houses were blocked, causing standing water in the backyards. This has created a major health problem, as it created a perfect environment for mosquitoes. I lost a dog to heartworm, as did my son. And it really does no service to just spray the ditches. The real problem is in the back between the railroad tracks, or what is now the They've converted it to a walking path. The problem is in that area where the mosquitoes breed. The Zika virus is now in Florida. Who knows how long before it reaches us? Experts say the mosquitoes can't survive in this climate. But insects have a way of adapting to environmental changes. Experts said the same thing about mad cow disease. The Flint water crisis has set a precedent, and many of those responsible for the problem are in jeopardy. Even after they have resigned or have been terminated, they are still being held accountable. As elected officials, you have a responsibility for the health and welfare of those who elected you. That's why we have plumbing, electrical, building, and other inspectors to see that the health and welfare of the people are not compromised. It's my hope that you will decide what is morally and politically acceptable. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon, and God bless.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joseph Rivet, Drain Commissioner. The value of interpretation. The teenager thing was a joke, just to try to bring a little levity. And so I was not a teenager. I thought I was over 28, actually, but potentially I was still at the Convention and Visitors Bureau at the time, so I might have been 28. I think what we have is some miscommunication. I do take, I guess, some exception to the first speaker's comments. There's reports and information, and you can interpret it any way you want, but we have only limited abilities to do what we can do within our job descriptions. This is the Michigan Drain Code. I can only do what's allowed here. When I was 14 years old, I broke my arm skating on a pond. We used to call it a pond behind my parents' house. It wasn't a pond, but every year there's about a foot of water that sits there until May, sometimes early June. In Bangor Township, it's so low that there's always standing water standing all over the place. And I was a bad skater and broke my arm on that pond in the middle of winter. So I know there's standing water in the spring, and there was standing water in the fall, and there's standing water in the winter. It's a condition that exists in a lot of places in Bangor Township. I do not disagree with any of Mr. McPherson's comments, either Mr. McPherson, very articulate comments, but let me clarify. What I meant was, I have a flow map from 1964. It had nothing to do with the ditch itself. Those maps just show the natural flow of water throughout the county. We have it in every section of every township throughout the county. I would concur that when they built the water mains and probably the sanitary sewer is when the problem started. My guess is to get the elevations they needed to run sewer lines or water lines, they had to lift the ditch because you got to have some separation there, of course. The Michigan Drain Code makes something very clear. For us to do work like that, we need a professional engineer. A professional engineer has to stamp those plans. And we get this a lot. There are people, lots of farmers specifically, Ms. Histed, who have been on their land for 50, 60, 70, 80 years. And they know the way it drains. And we respect and listen to that input. But ultimately, I have to listen to the professional engineers because the law of this state requires me to do so. So if I had to guess, as Mr. McPherson pointed out, they raised the elevation of that drain to accommodate the water and sewer systems that were incorporated. I don't have the plans. You know, we're drain guys, not sanitary sewer guys. You could probably track them down somewhere. But that would be my guess, and that's where the problem started. All that said, I can only do what it says in this book, in the Michigan Drain Code, which is I can maintain the drains, I can't re-engineer them, I can't redesign them, That requires a professional engineer, a petition, and my guess would be if the township, or we received a petition, it's a Chapter 20 drain, that's even more complicated, but if we got a petition, we got an engineer, they'd take a look at it and say, can't lower it because there's water and sewer mains and you can't get the elevation. So we are doing what I think we can. We also have no jurisdiction over the railroad companies. In fact, they're usually the most difficult to work with. So our ability to solve this problem has been, you know, is constrained significantly. And so when requested, we clean that ditch up, which is what we're allowed to do under the code. But beyond that, I would need a professional engineer, I would need petitions, I would need, and even all that said, my guess is we probably would not be able to address those circumstances. So I appreciate standing water and the problems that exist. And frankly, as you all know, as a public servant, 8 out of 10 people who call our offices to have the, you know, for us to help them, we can't help them because we can only do what's allowable within the Michigan laws, in my case, the Michigan Drain Code. And so we believe we've done what we could to resolve the circumstances within our ability. If a full design, if there's a petition received, if the township requested, if we get something more significant and we want to take an expensive look, the minute you bring in a professional engineer, it's an expensive look, we can try and resolve the matter further. Thank you.
Commissioner Creed.
So, Mr. Rippett, if I could, I have a question.
Sure.
So you're held within the restraints of that manual. How does one, I'm looking for a suggestion from you or some direction. Obviously, the health and welfare of the residents of Bangor Township is important, especially with the lady who can't go out because of the mosquitoes. And we do have water, like you say, Bangor Township is low. As commissioners that want to make sure that our constituents are taken care of, where do we go to see or get this resolved? I don't know if we go back to Mr. Hickner to see if we can get funding to have someone come out and look at the elevations and give us an opinion, or if that's something that goes through the Drain Commission to do. I'm sure Spicer or whoever would have paperwork on it. Just to say that you have to follow the manual isn't taking care of the needs of the people that are concerned. So either we have to go to people who put that manual together, if that's the legislators in Lansing, or what, I mean.
You know, as you know, Mr. Chairman, we do what we can. So taking a few shots is no problem. As you know, we have a professional surveyor on staff, thanks to you all, who has saved the county tens and, if not, you know, many more thousands of dollars than that. We've actually taken shots at the Bay City State Recreation at their request. And we found out they're low, and the only way to solve their problem is a lot of money in the storm drain system. Water existing between private properties is a township-related issue because it usually requires a 188 special assessment district at the local level to work together to find a way to resolve the matter. Ordinarily, you always have some property owners who disagree and it becomes very difficult. As you know, I have about 49 feet of right-of-way on either side of a drain. That's my jurisdiction. That's theoretically all I can work within. And that's what we did at Mr. McPherson's request some years ago, 5 years ago.
Let me ask you this. Your background is at being a past supervisor in Bangor Township.
Sure.
So let's pretend we're back when you were a supervisor, and these people come to you today saying, you know, we can't continue to be this way with this water that's back there. We need some kind of solution to help with the mosquitoes and the water that's back there. As a Bangor Township supervisor, would you go then to the Drain Commission?
No, there's no jurisdiction in the drain office.
Okay.
But what would have to happen is that several residents would petition the township, or they could work together and create a rear yard drainage structure. When I became Bangor supervisor, and now in the county, if you build a subdivision, you're required to do rear yard drainage because this is a problem throughout the county. So what essentially needs to happen is frankly, a rear yard drainage system that runs through there and then probably down the railroad line. We did sort of one when I was in Bangor Township, but it's a very difficult thing to get all residents to work together. It's all private property. And so essentially, and just as an aside, and I hate to take up your meeting, obviously.
You have all the time you want.
We have a small handout we provide residents related to ponding of water. There is no state statute. There are very few local statutes. In fact, the local statutes or ordinances have been mysteriously removed from the ordinance books because it's too hard to administer. So we fall back on natural flow, or what we call prescriptive water rights, which is common law stuff. It's court-decided stuff. Help me out, Ms. Johnson, when I get a little off track here, not an attorney. But the courts, if you have a dispute about standing water on properties or drainage from one property to another property, your recourse is a civil action in a court of law. And they will follow usually natural flow or prescriptive right decisions. You with me? Am I so far so good? All right. In making those determinations between property owners. So there's not even a Michigan state statute that says if one property owner is pouring water, storm water, rainwater onto another property owner, this happens. There's no statute for that. And so we find ourselves in an extraordinarily difficult position trying to resolve these matters. Most townships don't want to deal with it because, as you know, if there's an ordinance violation, their only solution is to go to their attorney, sue, and past judges generally don't like to deal with these cases. And so I can tell you many times, the 2 or 3 times I was a township supervisor in front of a judge trying to get something resolved, they're like, just go work this out between yourselves. And so ordinance enforcement's a very difficult thing as well. So there is the only real solution is cooperation among property owners, and we're happy to work. But once you get outside 49.5 feet, I have no jurisdiction.
So we need to attend a Bangor Township meeting then and talk with their trustees and supervisor to put this plan together?
Oh, I think the residents, if they want to work together, it's very doable, very plausible. We have every resident in Bangor Township, because it's a Chapter 20 drain, we actually have more flexibility in Bangor than we do other townships because it's what we call a Chapter 20. It's a consolidated drain. The entire township is technically one big drain. So, you know, we are happy to work with the township, with residents, but I would need construction easements, I would need plans, I would need to know how we're going to pay for it. And we are doing one of those right now on Dobson Drive in Bangor Township, as you're well aware of, Mr. Chairman. But it's been very difficult. One property owner's stopping us, is slowing us down significantly. And we need DEQ permits, and it's an expensive and difficult and long process. I would expect a similar thing here. But it has to be resident-driven. In the case of Dobson Drive, I had to get a specific resolution passed by the township under a specific provision of the code that allowed me to get involved in the project. So at least I would need that. And it's a supplementary drain district on top of a chapter drain, you know, it's a specific code. I got it right here if you want to.
So, Mr. McPherson, I'm assuming you'd be more than welcome
My
to.
issue is did anybody ever get those special people you're talking about to come out, survey, and do all that stuff, to fill my ditch, my drain in first? Or was this something that somebody just pulled out of their hat and said, hey, we're not gonna dig it down? Because they told him it was temporary. Now it's become permanent. Now we gotta go through the process you're talking about, which isn't really right because it was that way before. It should just be put back the way it was instead of having to go through and jump all these hoops. That it was fine before. Now that they've come through and done that waterworks thing, and the waterworks is blocked off a lot of our drainage too. It's not just his drain. it's the waterworks too.
Well, it sounds like the solution is to get with the township and get
I'll try and-
get the neighbors organized, and we'll
No,
get a
that might
meeting.
not happen because they're kind of elderly and like I said, I had to do a lot of pulling and begging for her to come. I mean, it's tough because there's not much old people left in there and the new people don't care. They stay in their house, they play video games, whatever the case may be. I mean, I can do what I can do. I can go and ask, but I can guarantee it ain't gonna happen. That's why I was so persistent. And this isn't something that happened just 5 years ago. I addressed this when I first moved in, which was probably about 14 years ago. And I've gotten all kinds of letters, well, if you want to get rid of the water, you got to get rid of it. Well, I'll be happy to, but just give me someplace to dump it. I can't evaporate it. Where am I supposed to turn if I don't have a drain that I can drain it to? This has been my whole issue. It's the depth.
I can't suggest, the decisions of my predecessor, but I would be hard pressed. Mr. Rosebush and Mr. Rosebush were pretty diligent, that the engineering company wouldn't have had to present something to them that showed it was gonna work. And I guess the one thing, and this is good, bad, or indifferent, the decision made back prior to me, their job is to get the drain to flow. And so whether or not they were considering, 500 yards back next to the railroad, I don't know what their consideration was, but I'm sure they would have needed to see an engineering to show that the drain itself would flow.
I know that we talked in the past, and you were going to have some of your men come out and clear some of the drainage, but
Yeah, by the end of the month, we can definitely, that portion near State Park Drive is no trouble. We've sprayed it, we've dug it several times in the last 10 years, and we will do that again. But it doesn't, how shallow that drain is a different matter.
well, with the skills of the individual that you have with Mark Bascom, I believe, can we have him go back out and do, whether it's a survey or a scan, to see if that elevation is proper or if it can be lowered? At least,
Of the ditch itself, no, because that's not legal. I need a professional engineer to say that we're gonna reshape that ditch. I also need a petition, a township-driven petition. I can maintain a drain. I can get it back to the way it was designed, which is what we did. But I can't restructure a drain without a petition and an engineered
but the way
stamp
it
plan.
stands right now is what you're saying, what's there is gonna stay there, is what you're telling me.
Unless I have an engineer, unless I have a formal petition and an engineer look at it, I am limited to what I can't, under what we call maintenance, under my everyday activities, I can't restructure, redesign a drain. That's not legal. We can pull a bank, we can get it down to its original design, we can do some of those things.
So who would you recommend for us to get in contact with to come out and look at it?
Let me do this, Mr. Chairman. I will put a how-to guide if you want to lower that ditch. And it's normally a petition, but this is a Chapter 20 drain, so I'm going to review it. But I think I would need something from the township requesting the drain board to take an action. And then we would have to consult an engineer, and then we'd have to go from there. But I think I would need a formal resolution from the township.
Okay.
Our lawyer's here. We'd have to look at that. Let's look at that.
I would like to note that I'm not the drain lawyer, as I've been told on many occasions. But I'd be more than happy to look at it.
I think Mr. Hickman.
Well, yeah. You want to go to, okay, Tom.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. What I would suggest, I don't have any legal authority in this matter, as the board knows, but this ought to be able to be worked out, and as Joseph said, that there is a legal formal process that he has to operate under. What we likely need to do is have the township board pass a resolution to move the issue forward, but I think what we could do is start with a discussion outside of this board meeting where the stakeholders get together and work it through, and then approach the township board formally after it was something in writing, with some discussion ahead of time. And my sense is that, and I have no background in drains, I used to sponsor the legislation on the drain code, but I never considered myself knowledgeable of the nuances. But it seems to me that not only does this specific issue with the property owner need to be addressed, but as Joseph mentioned, and as we've heard, that the state park campground has some issues too, and that may or may not be, ought to be part of the discussion. So that's what I would suggest, and we would be happy to help arrange the schedule. Right, Debbie?
Joe, thank you.
Commissioner Regan.
Just want to mention, we just went to Monitor Township, we've got the road millage now, so, but our drainage is not good in our subdivision. So we had to go through the process, the township had to agree, we had to get 50% of the landowners, property owners to sign the petition, do an engineering study, then come back with the cost, and then vote again. And we had to get a majority of people that would vote for that, so there's a process you have to go through. And then there's a special assessment, that means you gotta pay money. Yeah, that was the bad part.
They didn't get one when they filled it in. This is the whole issue here.
I'm just
You see
explaining, that's
does
a
anybody get
process.
what I'm getting here? I'm sorry for being disrespectful on that aspect, but I mean, let's produce some documents where they said, yes, we gotta fill it in and make it shallow so these people can't drain their land. Because it was fine before that waterworks come in. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Obviously, that was long before I was, I can't answer those questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Mrs. Higgins' daughter lives in the house west where Bill lives now. The water has cooled almost up to her front door. There used to be a ditch that ran from the side of her house out to the drain, Lawyer Road. But it can't drain anymore because the ditch has been lifted. As far as assessments, that should never happen because it worked before the water plant. It should be restored to its original condition where the property owners can drain into that ditch. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Tom.
In the drainage situation, mosquito came up. I'm not here for that, but I'd like to address it. Number one, Bangor Township is a very challenge to Bay County mosquito control. We, over the 30-some years, we know in Bangor, every single little pond, every single little drop of water. We have daytime checking the water, treating the water everywhere where it is, where it changes. We have people assigned there every single day. They don't leave Bangor Township from the 1st of June to the first frost. All they do is check and treat the water. We have a person for the nighttime truck, one person assigned to Bangor, and that person stays in Bangor every single treatment night. And from time to time, when the count gets high, we will double team and put two trucks on there. And also, for the last 30-some years, we have a New Jersey light trap at the state park property. So 3 days a week, we pick up that trap so we know intimately how many mosquitoes are in that area. And when there's a mosquito population arises, we take care of it. So we are, Bangor Township probably gets the most treatment township of all because it needs it.
You said you take care of the state park? You can't. Well, look and see how many people are camping over there because of the mosquitoes.
We take care of the state park very well. We bought special equipment to take care of the state park. We got, as you know, we've got the electric spray unit for that. You talk to the manager; they're quite happy with us at the state park. We take care of it all the time.
The name is Buck Grew. I live on Wheeler Road in Bangor Township, although I lived 13 years on Gloria Road west of Euclid. Joe, with all due respect to you, you inherited the problem, but I'm going to use a few of your words if I may. Whatever went through the bottom of the ditch, whatever utility, and now there has to be a separation. Now think with common sense, men and women. If we can't lower the ditch now to what it was originally, does that not mean that some engineer did not get his facts right, or that somebody did not follow the prints correctly? I've been in Bangor Township all my life, and I know how deep most of the ditches on Wheeler and so on, and all the other roads used to be, because we used to ride bikes there quite a bit. What I'm trying to say to you is, for a ditch not to be able to go down now because of something below it, and there has to be a separation, somebody messed up. Engineers or the contractor. That might be a point on which you should begin looking at. Maybe you need to do a depth charge and see what's down there and how far down it is and how much. First of all, the engineer that did this should have said, well, when was this ditch cleaned last? Because all ditches fill in over a period of years. And so I should know roughly where the baseline of this ditch should be and do his figuring from below that point. If I've made any sense to you at all, something's wrong here when we can't put a ditch down because of something else that was there, that is there now, that wasn't there before the ditch. You would think the ditch, first there, first at right. And with that, I yield to you, kind people. Thank you.
I'd like to make one correction, if I may. There's nothing below the ditch. The sewer line, the sewer line runs north of the ditch. The water line is in the middle of the road. There's nothing below the ditch. I think that's some confusion there. To think that there's something hampering lowering the ditch. There's nothing there. There is some, I believe, fiber optical alongside the ditch, but as far as beneath the ditch itself, there's nothing there. Thank you.
Mr. Pierce is probably right. When I look at it, at a grander scheme, and I'm talking about the ditch probably at State Park, because everything's got to go uphill. There's got to be fall. So you got to find the lowest point, which my guess would be the pipe running on, and this is just an educated guess. The pipe running under State Park is going to be the base, and then you got to start going uphill. And so if there's a sewer line running north or south under at State Park, then you have to be under that. So when I'm saying it probably got lifted, it may not even be there. It might be somewhere in Lagoon Beach. It may be somewhere closer to the river. I mean, all those things, they have to start somewhere and work back. And so my first thought is, whatever the pipe elevation is at State Park Drive, which now goes to the pump station, as you're aware, that's going to be their base. And if something's under there, that's where they got to start from. Also, sewer leads and water leads also have to run to the pipes, as you know. And so the leads would have to be 2 to 3 feet below that ditch so they don't freeze and break. And so when I talk about, where the elevations are, it's on a far broader scheme, but I would think the leads to the water main from your house has to be at least 36 inches under, so frost laws, and then the elevation at State Park, those are the ones that I'm referring to when I talk about separation and elevations.
Right.
The sewer line itself is over 7 feet deep. That would be to the top of the sewer line. Because when I had my sewer connected, it was at that depth or maybe even deeper. So it would get progressively lower as it traveled along the ditch. So, thank you, Mr.
I'll do some checking with water and sewer and look at the drawings and find out where their elevations are, and maybe Joseph and I can come to a better understanding. Once his crew goes out and maybe takes elevation shots of all the culverts along there to make sure that our flow's going in the right direction. Okay, anybody else want to come before the committee today? Seeing none, we will move on to petitions and communications. Item A, this is the County Executive Reorganization of Department of Public Defender.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Clerk.
There's still some questions that need to be answered and cost reviewed. So what I'd like to do is take A, the County Exec reorganization of the Department of Public Defenders and refer it back to administration.
We have a second.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any more? Yes, Commissioner.
What kind of time frame are we gonna have for this? I think this is something that we've been discussing for quite some time, and I think it's being mandated from the state as well. So I don't think we need to be dragging our feet on this. So hopefully we can get this, get together, the parties that need to be together and get this taken care of. Ultimately, the costs are going to be borne by the county. So
Could we maybe refer this to Ways and Means and have it taken care of in the next 2 weeks with all parties concerned?
I thought we were doing that last time.
Commissioner Regan.
I just have a question. We have the chief judge here. I don't know if the Supreme Court has ruled yet, or when the ruling is going to come down. Have we any idea of? I think I had heard June at one time, possibly.
Public hearings are very soon this month. Pardon me, I've got a bad cold. But what I will tell you is that we have judges who are on different legislative committees. And I spoke to one of the district judges that's on the committee that works with the MIDC, which is the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission that was created to kind of oversee all of this. And what he had indicated was that they've already gotten a memo from the governor's office. I'm paraphrasing, but basically saying, don't spend any of the money that you thought you were going to get. And actually, Mr. Mead was telling me right before you got started here today that there was something on MLive about the state's budget. And it kind of confirms that the Flint water crisis, they may not even be able to send all the money they were talking about sending there. So what these other programs and commissions have been told is that everybody's going to have to pull back because we don't have the money we thought we were going to have. And they've been told they're not going to fund what they had originally believed they could fund. What that is, that I do not know. It could be that they're not going to fund an attorney at an arraignment. It could be that they're not going to fund something else. There's so many things that are being discussed that they're talking about mandating in these new rules that at this point I wouldn't even have a clue what they're going to be able to pay for and what they're not. So I don't know about that.
Thank you.
Just a second.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Number one, we have no problem with this issue being, we would recommend moving it to Ways and Means. And if by Ways and Means, the issues that have been brought up have not been answered to the extent necessary, you can always refer it to the following. The issue that I was advised prior to the meeting was whether or not the cost estimates involving the renovation were on point or not. We can certainly do that. There is a larger issue that we've discussed, as the board knows, and that is the responsibility that we have to make sure that individuals who are charged with misdemeanors because our staff internal currently provide that representation for felony work, is whether or not the representation for the misdemeanor work is meeting the kind of standard that the guidelines suggest, which is more contact by the defense attorney than what previously has been done. We can discuss further whether or not the historic model that we had for many, many years, going back to when Judge Caprathi first came to Bay City as a defense attorney before he got elected to the circuit judge, which had all of the representation being inside, to the model that included farming out some of the work to the private attorney. We can discuss whether or not internal staff or contracts, we can discuss that again, but the bottom line is whether or not it's being, the defense work has to be performed and meet the standards that the state commission has. And the issue of funding from the state, I read the same article, they've got themselves in a situation that they caused themselves. You can't cut business taxes $1.6 billion and not have some consequences. And let alone all the other tax cuts that were enacted. But whether or not we get the money from the state or not, we have a responsibility to make sure that people are getting the defense that they're entitled to under the U.S. Constitution. So we can keep talking. I'll make sure that we keep Judge Clyde will follow up on all of these points, not only with Amber, but with myself. And as I said to the chair right before the meeting, we need to get this done, but I've learned over the years that if it doesn't get done today, we can always get it done tomorrow, as long as it's not forever that we don't get it done. I waited 6 years to get one piece of legislation through that had passed the House 3 times unanimously. So this shouldn't take 6 years, by the way.
I would hope not.
Commissioner Kuhn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with everything Tom said. It's more than, it's a moral thing too. It's our responsibility to make sure that indigent do get adequate assistance. But secondly, you got a larger looming problem out there. If they don't, are we on the hook for some sort of a suit that could be even greater, significantly cost-wise than whatever cost the state may or may not reimburse us for doing the separation that we need to do. So I hope that between now and Ways and Means, we can come up with some agreement, not worry about what the state's doing down in Flint. If it's going to cost some money, if we know it's the right thing to do, we ought to be doing it.
So, you want to modify your motion that it be referred to
Administration.
to administration, but brought back at
Ways and Means. Correct.
Concur.
And concur. Got that? Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Oops.
I just want to clarify for everyone what specifically this request is for, because the board has already approved the hiring of the other attorneys at a prior meeting. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this doesn't have to do specifically with the guidelines that are being passed by the state. This is an internal county issue regarding the reorganization of the office. What we're basically dealing with here isn't the hiring of the 2 additional attorneys, which has already been authorized. What we're dealing with here is the internal split of the existing office from 1 office into 2 for the purpose of avoiding conflicts of interest within the county. And that way we save money on having to refer the matters out that are referred to assigned counsel outside of the county due to conflicts.
That's all.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Same sign? Opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Now we're on to item B. All right, this is for the CEO Great Lakes Michigan Bay Work Modification of Current Michigan Works Interrogatory Agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'll be brief. If you remember, 4 years ago, Great Lakes Bay Michigan Works came before you asking for an interlocal agreement to change our Michigan Works Agency from 3 counties to 5 counties at that time. It was part of a whirlwind tour of things we had to do in order to meet a state deadline of October 1 to create this new Michigan Works Agency. We had to enter into a new interlocal agreement with 5 counties. We had to create a new consortium board of county commissioners covering the 5 counties, appoint a new workforce board, do a federally compliant procurement and get service providers in place for the 2 new counties, Gratiot and Isabella, all by October 1. We had 4 months. We did it all so that services did not skip a beat from September 30 to October 1 in Gratiot and Isabella. But in order to make that happen, what we had to do for the interlocal agreement is do something that 5 counties could agree to on a temporary basis. We couldn't come to complete agreement among the 5 counties for a permanent working agreement. So what we did, we basically did a quick amendment, modification 1, to the Saginaw Midland Bay interlocal agreement that just expanded it to include Gratiot Isabella. And in order to get agreement from everybody, we sunsetted that June 30, 2016, giving us time for the 5 counties to negotiate a permanent interlocal agreement. Well, we haven't been able to do that yet. So we're asking for a 6-month extension, a very simple modification 2 that changes the end date of that temporary agreement now from June 30, 2016 to December 31, 2016, and we're hopeful we'll have the permanent agreement worked out by then.
Yes, Commissioner.
I just want to say that things are moving well, too, on the board. And Gratiot and Isabella have been excellent partners in this endeavor, and I don't see any reason that there should be any hiccups in this going forward. We collaborate very well with them, and actually kind of happy to have them on the board. They bring another perspective to the table, and I hope that the Commissioner will support this and we can keep moving forward in this endeavor.
So we have a motion and support, and
Commissioner, I'll point out, it looks like the northern 3 counties are not going to be coming into the group.
Thankfully, we'll only have to worry about a 5-county organization rather than an 8-county organization. So that's actually good news for us.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign?
I want to say, Ernie, if we just stood like we wanted to, we would have won. That's what happened with the North. The labor board said that the governor cannot impede upon contracts between municipalities and.
What it was a very, so if give me like an additional 2 minutes. Region 7B Michigan Works to our north was a 6-county Michigan Works agency that the state dissolved. And the state had the power to dissolve them because they failed in performance on their federal performance measures. And the state read the federal legislation to say, okay, we can dissolve you if you fail any 1 year in the 2 prior years. Region 7B Michigan Works appealed that and won their appeal when the U.S. Department of Labor said, no, state, you're incorrect. For you to have that power, they would have had to fail on both years of the 2 prior years. And that's the reason Region 7B prevailed and are no longer going to be split up by the state, we hope.
That's good.
Okay, so we
Thank
approved
you.
that, didn't we?
Yeah, I just doing some more discussion here after the fact.
We're happy it's only 5.
Yes. I thought we approved it. Okay. All right, we are at item C, the Health Director. Hi, Joel. The agreement between Pinconning Area School District seeking approval of the agreement for telecommunications service.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. You want to tell us a little bit about that, Joel?
Sure. We've had local telephone service in our clinic at the Pitt County School District, I believe for the last 7 years, and we've had some issues with quality and cost and service, and we had decided to look for a new service provider, and while we were looking for a new service provider, we also decided that we would approach the school because they obviously have high-speed internet and a voice over IP service as well. And the solution that was presented to us from the school was very amenable. It has a lot of advantages, most notably that it's good, reliable service, and if any issues go wrong, there's a technician right on site there that we can have fix that, and probably the best thing, it's about $160 cheaper than what we're currently paying per month.
And that's a big savings, Joel.
It's a significant cost savings as well.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, we have the agreement with the Saginaw Valley State University seeking approval of the agreement to provide surface water quality testing.
Support.
Whoa, we have a motion and support. Commissioner Harris.
Joe, when they test, this is the thing, we've seen the paper, when they test, like, they'll say, oh, we were in this, went to Saginaw River, we went to the mouth of the river, we went to the beach, and you shouldn't swim today. Is this kind of what this is talking about?
It's that and the transition to moving to a more rapid testing solution, which is qPCR, quantitative polymerase chain reaction. The long and the short of it is that it reduces, it will help reduce the testing time from 24 hours to roughly about 6 to 8 hours. So we can tell on the day of whether or not the beach is unsafe rather than the day after. It's like taking your temperature today and then telling you tomorrow you're sick, stay home. So,
Thank you.
Commissioner Krieger.
Yeah, so Joe, how often, is this a daily event that goes on in different places throughout Bay County?
the surface water testing? Well, currently right now, we receive about $5,000 in funding from the state of Michigan through federal grants to do surface water testing on the beaches. And that essentially provides us with enough resources to do testing roughly about 1 or 2 days a week, and of the 24-hour testing type. And so with these anticipated funds that we're going to get, we'll be able to test at least the beaches at least 3 times per week. And those specific beaches would be Bay City State Recreation Area, Brissett Beach, and South Linwood Beach. We could potentially also try to include more rapid testing for Pinconning and
That's what I was getting at.
Winona, but just
If we're doing something in Pinconning also.
we will be also testing Pinconning and Winona, but we're also going to be using it to do much more testing, hopefully at the Cucaulin River and Saginaw River as well.
All right, thank you.
Now, do you do these primarily, I mean, say like this upcoming week when you got, 4 or 5 days of sunshine, no rain, would you tend to do those, or would you wait until the day after a rain event to test them?
Well, our beach testing season typically begins Memorial Day weekend and goes through Labor Day weekend. In the past, when we only did it 1 day per week, we would do it on a given day, a Monday or a Tuesday, or there was primarily no rhyme or reason other than the fact that if it was lightning and raining outside, we wouldn't go out and be collecting beach samples for safety reasons. Now we are actually more interested in obtaining samples in all types of weather, specifically during or after rain events. And the point behind this is that the methodology for that rapid testing is kind of on cutting edge, especially with Saginaw Valley State University. They're one of the first institutions in the United States to do this with fresh water, and we need to get more sampling done so that they can solidify their methodology in order to make that standard.
Commissioner Hart.
Just one more question.
Sure.
Are these folks, they work under two things, so under your direction and, so if and are they students or regular employees of the university or beyond? So I mean, it's probably a great thing for students to do this, but I don't know if they are or not.
It's actually a mixture of both. It's it's through their laboratory in conjunction with the chemistry department, and there are two professors, Dr. Civi and Dr. Karpovich, that are helping to head this thing up. They're actually also bringing in a biologist this year as well. They send students out to collect the samples. They bring those samples in back to the university and process them. There's students in the laboratory that actually process those. And they've done a number of studies with the samples that they've collected already. They're also expanding some of their services to some of the northern counties, Aranac, Iosco, and I think they're in discussions with Huron County as well. I mean, it makes sense for us to work with them because it's only a half-hour car ride from the beach to the university. A little bit more different once you get places more further north of Bay County. So, with the, I just want to say this too, with the qPCR testing methodology, that is a extremely technical and complicated system that really has to be housed at the university. We don't have the physical capacity, nor do we have the manpower and the expertise to house that equipment or even process those samples here at the health department ourselves.
Seeing no other, all in favor?
Aye.
Same sign, opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we're at personnel director. We can take all of our vacancies for vacancies and new positions, Division on Aging and Mosquito Control.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support. That's for the health aide, the on-call site manager, homemaker personnel, environmental affairs, and mosquito control. We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We have under Personnel Director, item 2, it's the Housing Department, the satellite dish and antenna installation policy.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? Commissioner Tilly.
Somebody here to.
Yes, she's here.
Oh, yes. So has there been an issue? Is that why we have to do a policy?
Our current policy, our ACOP, our Admissions and Continuing Occupancy Plan, doesn't currently enable residents to have satellite dishes. So when in the past people have requested one, our current policy prohibits it. So we're just putting it into our policy that they're able to have one. And it also did not address antennas, and we have had some issues with antennas that are hanging off of balconies and such, since people haven't been utilizing the cable service. So we just wanted to address the limitations of the size and location of antennas, because that wasn't previously addressed in our ACOP or any of our policies.
Correct. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Kuhn.
Well, I think competition's great, but in there, reading the background, it said they can't drill holes and all this. I don't know how you're gonna run cable or attach cable without drilling holes. Is it gonna be so restrictive that?
Other area housing facilities, such as ours, other high-rises, are able to utilize the same sort of policy. And what they do is, rather than attaching the satellite dish to the balcony, they use almost like a 5-gallon bucket that you can buy from Home Depot or something. They put concrete in it or rocks or something and have the satellite dish from using that. So it's more of a portable satellite dish. It can be moved around on the balcony versus being something that's attached to our building.
How do you run the wire? Through the door, or?
I'm not sure, but I know that they're able to do it. I don't know how the technicians specifically do it. I'm sorry.
Anybody else? I just have one question. So now you got, 100 residents over there, and you got 100 balconies, and, so now you got these 100 either antennas or dishes sticking out on them. Is there gonna be any problems with, you know, people trying to, get off in case of fire or anything? Are these gonna be a hindrance to anybody, you know, leaving the building? Because I know they, you know, it's a multi-story building and they will use the stairwells and the
I don't think the
elevators when necessary, but, you know.
I don't think the satellite dish would be any more prohibitive than anything else that's kept out on their balconies, chairs, things like that, so.
Okay.
It's something that we inspect every year to make sure that egress isn't blocked during their annual inspections, so I don't foresee a problem with that.
It's probably not gonna look the prettiest.
No, it's not.
100 of them. Okay. We have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. As far as I know, we don't have any referrals from anybody. We don't have any unfinished business. Any new business from anybody? Miscellaneous? Announcements? Vaughn.
You don't have another meeting before Memorial Day, May 30th, Memorial Day. But pretty sure it's usually a 9 o'clock ceremony out in front of the building here. You usually have across the river the Vietnam Vets Memorial is around 10:30, and the Veterans one is usually around 12:30 after Floral Gardens. It'll be in the paper. They'll have a schedule for the services.
They'll have something at
the ship. Yeah, the ship I think is, I talked to them the other day, about 3 o'clock or so at the Edson.
Anything on beach wellness?
Just the June 25th's coming up. As we get closer, we'll certainly be talking about it.
Okay. Well, just
Thank
I'll
you.
give you the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn is always in order.
Support.
Thank you, Michael. We have a motion and support. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're gone.